It was an ordinary Sunday afternoon in Savannah, Georgia. The kind of day where errands felt routine and unremarkable. The Target parking lot on Abercorn Street was busy but calm. Families loading groceries, carts rolling across asphalt, engines starting and stopping as people came and went. Nothing about the scene hinted that it would soon become the setting of a tragedy that would ripple across the nation. Parking lots are places of impatience. People rush. Tempers flare. Small misunderstandings happen every day and usually disappear just as quickly. But on this afternoon, a disagreement over a parking space did not fade away. Instead, it escalated. According to investigators, two men crossed paths in the lot. Words were exchanged. What began as frustration quickly became confrontation. Witnesses later described raised voices and visible tension. An argument over something so minor that it barely seemed worth remembering. Yet, in those moments, emotions took control. Within seconds, the argument reached a breaking point. A firearm was produced. A single decision made in anger changed everything. Shoppers nearby froze. Some ran. Others stood in shock as the sound of gunfire shattered the calm. The parking lot that moments earlier felt safe and familiar now felt unreal, like a nightmare unfolding in broad daylight. Police and emergency responders arrived quickly, but the damage had already been done. What should have been an uneventful trip to the store had become the scene of a fatal shooting. This was not a crime hidden in darkness or secrecy. It happened in public, in daylight, in a place everyone recognizes, and that is what made it so disturbing. The victim was identified as Matthew Trawick, a husband, a father of 3, and a hard-working member of his community. To those who knew him, Matthew was more than a name in a news headline. He was someone who showed up for his family, for his job, and for the people around him. Friends described him as dependable and kind. A man who worked hard to provide, who loved his children deeply, and who was focused on building a future. That Sunday afternoon was supposed to be just another day, another errand, another moment before returning home to his family. Instead, his life ended in a place meant for convenience, not conflict. The news devastated his loved ones. His wife was left to face an unthinkable loss, while his children were forced into a reality no family is ever prepared for. Messages of grief and disbelief flooded social media as friends and strangers alike tried to understand how something so small could result in something so final. A GoFundMe was launched almost immediately, not just to help financially, but as a way for people to express their heartbreak and support. Each message told the same story. Matthew didn't deserve this. No one did. Community leaders spoke out, emphasizing the senselessness of the violence. They reminded the public that behind every crime statistic is a human being, a life with meaning, relationships, and responsibilities. Matthew Trawick was not part of a criminal world. He wasn't looking for trouble. He was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. And for his family, that truth makes the loss even harder to bear. The suspected shooter was identified as Tyler Edward Lynn, a 30-year-old man who, according to police, did not flee the scene. Officers took him into custody shortly after the shooting, bringing an abrupt end to the immediate chaos, but not to the questions that followed. Lynn was charged with murder and aggravated assault, charges that reflect the seriousness of the act and the irreversible outcome. Authorities confirmed that the two men did not know each other prior to the encounter. There was no long-standing dispute, no history, just a moment that spiraled out of control. That fact alone stunned many observers. How does a disagreement between strangers escalate so quickly? What thoughts cross someone's mind in the seconds before pulling a trigger? Law enforcement began piecing together witness statements, surveillance footage, and physical evidence from the scene. Each detail mattered. Each timeline had to be reconstructed carefully. In cases like this, clarity is essential, because assumptions can be as dangerous as silence. As news spread, public reaction was swift and divided. Some focused on the need for accountability. Others struggled to comprehend how anger could override reason so completely. Online discussions reflected fear more than outrage, a realization that something so ordinary could turn deadly anywhere. The arrest answered one question: who was responsible for the shooting? But it raised many others. What truly happened in those final moments of the argument? Could it have been stopped? And what does this say about how quickly violence can erupt in everyday life? In the hours following the shooting, the Target parking lot was transformed. Police tape replaced parking lines. Patrol cars filled the spaces once occupied by shoppers. The familiar hum of daily life was replaced by sirens, flashing lights, and silence. Witnesses described disbelief. Some replayed the moment in their minds over and over, struggling to process what they had seen. Others spoke of fear that something so violent could happen so suddenly, in a place they visited without a second thought. Savannah residents reacted with grief and anger. Many asked the same question: how did we get here? How did everyday frustration turn into irreversible loss? Local officials urged calm and reflection. They emphasized the importance of de-escalation, reminding the public that no argument, especially over something trivial, is worth a life. Mental health advocates and community leaders echoed the same message. Anger left unchecked can destroy everything in its path. The tragedy became a mirror, reflecting uncomfortable truths about conflict, patience, and impulse. It forced people to confront how fragile safety can feel and how quickly it can vanish. This was no longer just a crime scene. It was a warning, a reminder. a moment that would stay with the community long after the tape was removed. While legal proceedings moved forward, Matthew Trawick's family faced a reality that no courtroom could fix. Grief settled in quietly but heavily. Daily routines were shattered. The absence of a husband and father was felt in every corner of their lives. Support poured in from friends, co-workers, and strangers who had never met Matthew but felt connected by the injustice of his death. Donations, messages, and prayers became a lifeline, not just financially, but emotionally. Yet no amount of support could replace what was lost. His children would grow up with memories instead of moments. His wife would carry the weight of explaining a tragedy that never should have happened. This is the side of true crime that often fades behind headlines. The long, silent suffering that follows after cameras leave. The birthdays missed. The empty chairs. The future rewritten in an instant. Violence does not end with the victim. It echoes through families, through communities, through time. And in this case, that echo began with an argument that could have ended with a deep breath and a step away. As the Savannah parking lot returned to normal, the memory of what happened there did not fade. People parked their cars, walked into stores, and carried on, but with a heightened awareness. A reminder that life can change in seconds. This case forces difficult questions. About anger, about self-control, about how easily human lives can be lost when emotion overrides judgment. It challenges the idea that violence only lives in dark alleys or dangerous neighborhoods. Sometimes it lives in places we consider safe. Parking spot, a moment of impatience, a decision that can never be undone. True crime often seeks answers, but not every story offers comfort or closure. Sometimes the lesson is simply awareness, an understanding of how fragile peace can be. The death of Matthew Trawick stands as a stark reminder. Walk away when you can. Choose restraint. Choose life. Because once a line is crossed, there is no rewind.